a little easier to see the cracks when you're in the glass and where to go when you have a good light source. I'm going to use a couple things. This pair of tweezers, got a better pair of tweezers here that's a little sharper, and then also this piece of plastic here. It's rigid enough to help separate the glass from the display. You'll see how I do that, or the display from the frame. You'll see how I do that in a second. I'm just going to analyze the edge here and see what I can pick away as far as what glass shards are already loose, what can I move out of the way. Now, I've thought long and hard about how I want to do this video, because there's parts of this video that I could simply cut out, but I think that there's a lot that can be learned if you stick through and watch the whole thing. You'll see where things can go wrong, and also the struggles that can happen throughout. So here I'm going to pick at this piece of glass, and I notice that it wants to move, but it has a portion of the glass that's on top of the display. So here I have some isopropyl alcohol. I'm going to add a drop into that crack, and what this will do is it'll seep down and touch the display, and as it does that, it's going to help loosen the grip that the adhesive has on the glass, and I'll be able to move that. And as I put pressure on that piece of glass and widen the gap, if I notice any resistance, I want to add out a little bit more of the isopropyl alcohol, because if I pull too hard in one direction, I could damage the digitizer, and I could also damage the display. And this being the newest Apple Watch, these displays are fairly expensive, just under $300 to replace. And so doing this repair for customers at like half that or whatever, I can't afford to make a mistake. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to profit from this repair, and I'm not even going to be able to offer a reasonable price for the repair if I'm messing too many up. So I really take my time on every single watch that comes in to make sure that they're each receiving the same amount of care. Now that I've removed that piece of glass, it gives me a little bit of more access to the edge here. But this glass shard that I'm trying to push against is facing the wrong direction. It's going to want to cut into the plastic. This is as I can tell from looking at this, is going to be my best entry point. And there are other ways to kind of get at this, but what I like to do is I like to basically try until I get it, and do it in a careful way, because I don't want to damage the Force Touch sensor that goes around the underside of the glass edge on the frame. If I can avoid replacing that every time, that's better, because it has the original seal, that instead of pulling that up and having to basically make sure that there are two seals that are done properly. I'm going to speed up the video a little bit because this is a little time consuming, but you can see how difficult it is to slide it in there. But once I start in there, as long as there's no glass shards, it tends to slide. And as I turn the corner, I need to make sure I don't have too much of the plastic under the display, because there are certain sensitive bits on the inside that if the plastic hits, I may not even notice that it's starting to cut into them. I accidentally hit the power button there for a second, so we'll be able to test it anyway as we go through this process. But I want to turn that corner, and as I turn that corner, make sure that the plastic isn't in too far, because otherwise I'm going to cut into those cables. Also getting snagged up here on another shred of glass, and so I have to find my way around that. But with enough persistence and patience, it's possible. Let's go ahead and test this real quick, just so you guys haven't seen that yet. Force Touch works, the touch worked all the way around. That's all that I really need to perform throughout the repairs, just to make sure that the display looks good, the touch looks good, and that I haven't damaged the Force Touch sensor as I'm going through this. And once I am able to get past that shard of glass, that looks like I'm going to be able to slide around until I meet up with another and work around that, and carefully work the plastic in and around down the side. Each little shard of glass creates its own little problem, and after having done this so many times, I kind of know my way around each one of these types of cracks that I'm presented with. The little different sawing motions, the angle of the plastic, it all matters as you do this, the cleanliness of the plastic, if it has cuts or not. And the same thing as we run the corner, making sure that we only have enough plastic to get under there, and then the screen is able to come off. There you can see, or maybe not see, but it's a Series 5 44mm. I'll show you again later, but we'll test it again once we have it all the way off before we disconnect it to make sure that everything still works. With the light makes it kind of hard to see. But we won't be able to test the Force Touch right now, just simply because it's not connected anymore, and I don't want to risk pushing down on the screen at this point because I could damage it if I don't have it perfectly aligned. Adding a little bit of isopropyl alcohol helps allow these the adhesive to come off, and then also adding a little bit of isopropyl alcohol to the stickers here. I'm able to pull them back. They are gentle, they're very sensitive, so they do break, and they're not too critical for the functionality of the device, so I'm not too worried if I ever accidentally cut that. Once I've disconnected the latches, I'm able to pull those connectors out, and then I'm going to gently pull the each one of those flex cables away from the copper sticker. This is just a step that'll help me in the future as I go to connect it. The next thing that I'm going to need to do is clean up the frame, and I'll show you a little bit more of that later in the video. Now this particular crack here, the way that it cracked, it doesn't leave me with much of an edge exposed. The glass tends to line up perfectly with the display, and almost has a little bit of ridges of glass that come up a little too high for comfort. But and as you can see, there's multiple layers to this display. You've got the glass, you've got the adhesive, the digitizer, some more adhesive, then the polarizer, display, etc. It's a lot of components sandwiched into such a small display, and so it's crucial to get this right. And so under my microscope, I'll be able to insert the wire manually before moving it over to my heat plate, which will allow me to cut the display off. So under my microscope, I'm going to look, and I'm going to take the tip of my tweezers and kind of try to scrape away some of the teeny shards that are impeding me from putting the wire in, and maybe some of the adhesive, ensuring that I'm getting the wire in the correct layer. Now, even though I have better than 20/20 vision, under a microscope is recommended because it's extremely difficult to see because it's so small and so delicate. So this is one of those areas where things can go wrong. So here I've got my really thin wire. You can see it there in the reflection, and hard to see otherwise, but very thin. This is 0.04 millimeter. I use it for a lot of my refurbishing of the iPhone screens and some of the other stuff. It's a little too thin for the iPad screens if you're ever trying to replace the glass on, say, the iPad Pro or the Air 2. You know, one of where the displays adhere to the glass. It's just it's not strong enough to withstand all of that adhesive. It'll snap. So as I'm able to carefully work that wire in, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to push it up against the tape to hold it in place. The tackiness of the tape is just going to hold the wire in so it doesn't move. I'm going to make sure it's a little taut as I stick it down to the tape. Just double checking that it's all aligned. It's not going to start slicing into the digitizer. That looks good. Next we'll go ahead and turn on my heat blade, which I should have already done. I'll remove one of the older, I think it's a Series 4 that I just did for another customer. And I'll line up the screen that we're working on. I'll put turn on the suction there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to carefully make sure the wire isn't going to get caught in the tape, and I'm going to add some more tape to the edge of this tape because this is such a small screen, it tends to move around, and just taping down the screen to the actual machine makes it so that even if it does start to slide around as the wire is pulling on it, that it's not going to pop off that easily. Now, in most of the watches that I do, I don't have to go under the microscope every single time to get on the edge. This one in particular, though, is one of those. And so once I'm up closer to the temperature that I like, I can go ahead and start sliding the wire and cutting the glass away from the display. So I'll carefully peel the wire away from the adhesive without making it come out from where I've placed it, and I'll start to slide back and forth. Speed this up a little bit because, well, one it's really hard to see where my hands are sometimes because they're out of shot, but the other thing is it takes quite a bit of time to do this in general with the way that this screen has cracked. And one of the issues that I'm running into here is there's the digitizer flex cable. There's a part of the cable that you can kind of see down in there. It's that goldish looking piece. It'll get caught by the wire because I can't get the wire around it. So I'm going to carefully get in there, maybe with my tweezers or even just that same piece of plastic that we were using earlier. I can get under the flex cable and manipulate it out of the way, and then I can actually leave that piece of plastic there and work the wire around it until the wire has passed under the flex cable so that I don't damage it. Because if I do damage that flex cable, then I have to replace the digitizer on this display, and replacing the digitizer just means that I have to do more work and it costs me more, which means I don't make as much money, and it's just not fun. So if I can take my time here, even if it takes me half an hour or so, just to get the glass off, it's worth it in my opinion to maintain that originality. So I'm going to move the wire around. Now, this is something that kind of comes with time, understanding how hard to pull in which direction. If you pull too hard in any given direction, you start to scrape and even cut into the digitizer, rendering it with issues in the future, so you have to replace it. Or you could even start to put too much pressure on the display and you'll end up with dead pixels and other things. And so all in all, it's just one of those things where if you haven't done refurbishing in the past, or any type of glass repair, I would not recommend it. Now that I've gotten all the way around it, I'm just going to make sure that we've cut it, and there it is, all good to go. You can still see some of the adhesive that stayed on there. Sometimes it's a lot more than that. I was more lucky in this one getting most of the adhesive, and I'll gently rub off the adhesive. If you've ever watched my friend Zach at Jerry Rig Everything video where I showed him how to do a Series 4, he describes this as wiping the dust off a Dorito, and it's basically like that. Without cracking the Dorito, can you wipe off the flavor? So we'll take some acetone and a clean room wipe, and we're going to clean up the display and make sure that we did not damage at all the digitizer. You can also see that we didn't, scrape it or anything. There's the old piece of glass, and here's our new glass lens that we're going to put on there. Right here I've got a little wax tower that I put this on, and then we're going to clean up the display with that. Now we need to add some LOCA. LOCA stands for Liquid Optical Clear Adhesive. It's basically adhesive that stays in liquid form until the ultraviolet light hits it. I got a bubble in there, so I'm going to carefully pick at that and remove it. And I need a little bit more Loka, so we're going to add that after cleaning the lens, making sure that it is dust free and fingerprint free, because we don't want a speck of dust to be caught in between the glass and the display, because that would be pretty annoying to look at if you knew where it was. And carefully setting it down, I'll be able to get the adhesive to stick to the glass without bubbles. Now in this case, I think I just waited too long and the Loka spread out too wide, and I did end up getting a teeny tiny bubble. And I'll show you how I get that out later. I don't like it when I get bubbles in general, because it means that I have to put a little bit of pressure on the display, which means that the Loka squeezes out more than I'd like it to, which just, it doesn't hurt it in any way. It just means I have to do more cleanup work. You can kind of see it running off. If you look really carefully, it runs off the edge there. Once the Loka is spread all over the display, which can take some time, I think I waited total maybe 10 minutes for that or so for it to move around, I can go ahead and bring it back under my microscope, and with the UV light kind of at a distance shining on it, I'm going to carefully move around, looking at each corner of the display, making sure it's completely centered with the glass. And once it started to firm up and I'm satisfied, I can hit it a little harder with the UV light, and then I could stick it in my little oven that basically is what you may see at a nail salon for somebody's hands. And I'll carefully work around the Force Touch sensor here, gently scraping at the adhesive without actually scraping the Force Touch sensor or damaging it anyway. Sometimes you can peel up or pick out a whole section at once, and other times you have to just suffer through trying to move this stuff, and it's pretty hard to pull off, but sometimes you get lucky and you can pull off a whole side at once. And I'll just have to go around the whole thing and do that, but I won't bore you with all of that. Next thing I'm going to do is take a little bit of in this case acetone. I'm going to go around the edge, clean up the edge and any spill out that the Loka had from me putting pressure on it after it's cured. And once I have a good clean edge that I know that I can adhere to, I'll go ahead and connect it. So on each one of these flex cables, there's a little bar that basically goes across it in the shape of like a T on the black part, and I'm able to use that to gently push in each one of the connectors, kind of going back and forth between sides, just to make sure it's all the way in. And then once that's done, I can gently push down on the connectors there and get them to snap down. And we'll go ahead and plug it in and test it. So far so good. Looks like we've got an Overking display. Of course it looks dimmer right now just because of the lighting from the light above. We'll simply run it through the tests that I perform, where I basically look at the display, test the touch, and test the Force Touch by gently putting it in place. If everything looks good, we'll go ahead and adhere it, and I'll show you how I do that in a second. I'm having to take care of a customer right now, and I totally didn't realize that. Now, if there's a video out there that you do want to see me do, something I haven't done before, an idea, feel free to leave it in the comments below. I'm always looking for new ideas, new videos to do, and when I come up with one, I do my best to put it out there. But sometimes I get caught up in just everything that I'm doing. All right, so easiest way for me to test the touch is to basically hold the power button down. It allows me to grab the slide bar and move it around the screen, and as long as it follows my finger from corner to corner, and it doesn't ever either turn off or let go during the process, then we're good. So now I'm confident that everything's going to work on this, so we'll go straight into adhering it. Look how good that looks. Love the way that they come out. Good as new. And I probably shouldn't put it back on the charger because I didn't want it to turn back on, but I'll turn it off. So there you can get a better glimpse. Series 5 44mm. Now the adhesive that I'm going to use for this is the E8000. If you in some of my previous videos, I've gone into depth as to why I prefer that adhesive over any other adhesives. Basically, in the gist, it has the flexibility and the water resistance that I feel is necessary, and it also has the hold, the bond. It has a good enough bond between the glass and the Force Touch to stay on. I wouldn't recommend going swimming with a watch that's been damaged in general, because there are several places that water can enter other than under the screen. And just in general, I wouldn't go swimming with these watches, because I've had so many people contact me with brand new watches saying, "Hey, do you fix water damage stuff?" I've only had it for a month. It's not broken, but I got it wet. So I'm going to carefully go around and add an even bead, make sure that I've got a solid bead all the way around the Force Touch there. We'll line up the little antenna there on the back of that display there, and then we'll push it down. Once it's down, we're just going to go to each corner and make sure it's got a good solid, that it's all the way down. And then I'm going to take a little bit of acetone with a cleaner wipe, and we're going to go ahead and clean up any of the seepage there, the spill out, because at this point it's in its easiest state to clean. It hasn't yet hardened up, giving it a nice finish, cleaning all the edges.